This is KRT, Critical Race Theory. It's not the one they teach in law school, but the one banned in public schools. Today we explore the Houston riot of 1917. In 1917, the 3rd Battalion of the 24th United States All-Black Infantry had been deployed from New Mexico to Texas to guard a construction at Camp Logan. That's a base that would be built not long after the United States entered World War I. The soldiers came to town with patriotism in their hearts, ready to serve their country faithfully. But in Jim Crow America, they were met with racist provocations and physical violence. In Houston, the sight of black soldiers carrying guns incensed white people. The soldiers, trained to fight in a war for democracy, were outraged by racist taunts, being called the N-word, by whites-only signs, and by demands by conductors that they sit at the back of streetcars. The events leading to the infamous Houston riot began August 23, 1917, when white Houston police officers burst into the home of a black woman, assaulting her and pulling her into the street, with her 5 children watching. She was dressed only in her nightgown. According to the Texas Historical Commission, when a black soldier, Army Private Alonzo Edwards, came to her defense, he was pistol whipped by a white officer and then arrested. Corporal Charles Baltimore, one of the most respected soldiers in the regiment, went to the police station to check on Edwards. While there, Baltimore was beaten by police, shot, and arrested. He was later released. But by then, false reports had reached the black soldiers' camp that Baltimore had been killed. That's when 156 soldiers of the 3rd Battalion refused orders to stay on the base and marched to Houston armed with rifles and ammunition. When they reached the city, the black soldiers fought the Houston police and local citizens in gun battles. 5 white police officers were among those killed. The next day, martial law was declared. 63 black soldiers were charged with disobeying orders, mutiny, murder, and aggravated assault. The soldiers all pleaded not guilty and were defended by a single man. It was Major Harry S. Green, who taught law at West Point, but was not a lawyer and had no trial experience. Although 169 witnesses testified for the prosecution during the 20-day court-martial, many could not identify the defendants because the riots unfolded at night during a heavy rain. Yet on November 28, 1917, 13 Buffalo soldiers were sentenced to be hanged. 41 black soldiers were given life sentences, 4 were given lesser sentences, 5 were acquitted, and 2 more court-martials were held to try other soldiers. The men being sent to the gallows were ordered to write letters to their families. The hangings of the soldiers who didn't have a chance to appeal provoked outrage across the country. The New York chapter of the NAACP petitioned President Woodrow Wilson for clemency. Yeah, I bet that was successful. Before the sun came up December 11, 1917, 13 Buffalo soldiers were marched to the gallows in a military camp near Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio. It had been 4 months since the rampage in Houston left 15 white people and 4 black people dead. That's what it was all about, killing white people. That's a big no-no. The all-black soldiers of the 3rd Battalion 24th Infantry Regiment had been hastily convicted of murder and mutiny during the largest court-martial murder trial the country had ever seen. The 13 soldiers proclaimed their innocence until they ascended the gallows. They had requested to be shot by a firing squad, which was considered a more honorable way to die in the military. But an all-white jury sentenced them to death by hanging. So one by one that morning, nooses were hung over the gallows, chairs were kicked out from beneath the soldiers, and they dropped to their deaths. The hangers were so swift that not one of the soldiers had been given a chance to appeal for clemency. They were buried in graves with markers indicating only numbers 1 through 13. Later, 6 more soldiers were executed. It was one of the largest mass executions carried out in the history of the U.S. Army. Then on Monday, November 13th, 2023, 106 years later, the Army formally announced it had overturned convictions of 110 soldiers convicted in the Houston riots. Sorry, my bad. I digress. Officials also announced the Army would correct the military records of 95 Buffalo soldiers who were not restored to duty to show honorable discharge. The Army also announced that it would partner with Veterans Affairs to deliver survivor benefits to the soldiers' descendants. Army Brigadier General Ronald D. Sullivan, Chief Justice of the Army's Court of Criminal Appeals, told a crowd gathered at the Buffalo Soldiers National Museum in Houston, quote, "Even with the backdrop of entrenched state-sanctioned racial segregation, there was an immediate public outcry about the miscarriage of justice." Gabe Camarillo, the Undersecretary of the Army, said the Army had undertaken a process to restore their honor. Today, we are here to deliver on that promise. The crowd rose in a standing ovation during a ceremony in which each of the men's names was read, followed by the tolling of a bell. The announcement comes 5 years after descendants of 3 of the hanged men petitioned the U.S. government for posthumous pardons, arguing the Buffalo Soldiers had suffered grave injustices at the hands of the United States when they were executed by hanging after a defective trial by court-martial. Angela Holder, a professor of American history and a relative of one of the Buffalo Soldiers, said in a Houston Post interview that the overturning of the convictions marked a profound moment in U.S. history. Holder was one of the descendants who spoke during the ceremony at the Buffalo Soldiers National Museum. She said, quote, "It was surreal to hear each name called and the bell rung for each of those men. It was such a beautiful experience that these men were being recognized and they were being restored back to a place of honor." With that said, I see no reason today for any of your kids, grandkids, nieces, and nephews to fight for this country. We have been catching hell since we landed in Jamestown, Virginia. First, there was slavery. Then Jim Crow, the Black Codes, the Ku Klux Klan, lynching, race massacres, with us being the only race massacred and lynched. Dory Miller was a Navy hero doing the only job he could get, which was a mess attendant. When receiving his medal, General Patton would not shake his hand. They steal our money when we travel on the roads, and now they are stealing our hard-earned money when we travel on planes. They don't want us to travel. Remember the college athletes they pulled over in their bus in Georgia and tried to say they had drugs? The hillbilly cops were trying real hard to pin something on them. They have been filing lawsuits to keep us out of college for years. Then Trump packed the court with bigots, and the rest is history. Well, that's the end of my rant. This has been Critical Race Theory. Please like and subscribe, leave a super thanks or buy me a coffee, and share this video with your friends and family. I'll see you next time.